If you're moving to Moline, Illinois, you want to know the bad and the good. And luckily, today we're gonna cover both, as I am going to react to reviews of Moline from niche.com. So what does this look like? Well, we're gonna cover the best reviews all the way down to the worst reviews, and we're gonna do it right now. Now, again, we're starting with the best reviews, and if you want to see the worst reviews, well, you're gonna have to stick around to the end of this video because we will cover those worst reviews, but we're gonna start with the best because I like to start with our best foot forward. So what is our first review? Moline is an excellent town to grow up and develop a sense of self in. The community is great and there's plenty to do around town. Not only is Moline part of the 5 cities that make up the Quad Cities, but it's home to Blackhawk College, excellent community college that makes up a large portion of the Illinois Quad citizens. Now, this is kind of a cool review because as you see during our other reviews, that they're going to talk about things that aren't available to do. The thing about Moline to me and the Quad Cities is that if you're looking for something to do, you can usually find it, but if you're not, well, you don't have to be constantly doing things. So it's kind of a weird thing that you'll see in the other reviews of people complaining that there's nothing to do, but this person is saying there's plenty to do. So it's kind of cool to see that dynamic. Now, as far as the community college, yes, Blackhawk College is over in Moline, and it's a great institution for people going for higher education, and we see a lot of people going over there. There is other competing community colleges in the Quad Cities, and Blackhawk is one of the best. So it's really cool to see that in Moline, and that review pretty much exemplifies what that is. And now our second review says, Moline, Illinois is a nice, quiet area. I've only been here for about 6 months. My family and I just moved here from California and have been enjoying the different pace here. We are still finding new things to explore and doing it together as a family. I love this review because I help people move to the Quad Cities and Moline from all over because and thanks in part to this channel. And I hear this a lot, especially from people moving from California to Moline, and it's a big deal. The change of pace of life is pretty dramatic when you get into Moline, and it's usually for the better for the people that decide to make that move. And it just goes to show that they're saying that when they're writing reviews of the city of Moline. So it's really cool to see that my experience matches up with what this review is saying. And we're gonna move on to our last 5-star review, and then you'll start seeing the lower star reviews. But our last 5-star review says, I lived here when I was a child, and I more recently moved back 1 year ago. This town is the only place that has truly ever felt like home. From walking my dogs down by the parks to going to preschool and hunting for eggs on Easter and sledding down the hill by my home. I love and grew up in this town. This is an awesome review. Obviously, it's somebody that grew up here, went away, and came back. And I see this a lot happening to folks that have grown up here. They seem to want to always come back for whatever reason. Sometimes it's to raise a family, sometimes it's to start a career, but we see it quite often that people are moving back to the city of Moline because it just is that sense of home that you can't really get anywhere else. So it's really cool to see that in a review. And the whole thing about walking the dogs down by the park is super relevant. We have parks all over Moline, and you see it all the time. People walking their dogs down by the river or going to Prospect Park. So you see it a lot, and it's very accessible in the city of Moline. All right, so that is it for our 5-star reviews, but let's head on to a 4-star review. Now, for me personally, if I'm shopping on Amazon, I'm usually looking at the 3s and 4s to really get a sense of what the community is like. So you're gonna wanna pay attention to what these say more than the 5-star because obviously those guys are raving fans, but these may be a little more critical on what it's like to actually live in Moline. So our first 4-star review says, having lived in Moline for as long as I have lived, I can say that Moline is a nice small sized town where you can feel at home. Although there's not too much to do in Moline, there are public events held once in a while for the enjoyment of everyone. Now again, I said that you're gonna see a theme that people are always saying there's nothing to do here, but the other part of that theme is that if you're looking for things to do, you can usually find it. We have places like the Vibrant Arena down on the river. They hold events, concerts, rodeos, monster truck rallies, really cool things to do down there. And then also in East Moline, which is right across the city line, is the Rust Belt, which is a music venue that you can go and see some pretty big names to be there, to be quite honest with you. So again, if you're looking for something to do, you can usually find it, but don't expect to have things constantly going because Moline really isn't a huge city that you may see like a Chicago and the events that go on in that area. All right, so let's move on to our second review in the 4-star category. The size of Moline is just right. There is enough of a variety of restaurants and fun things to do, and it's not so small that everyone within town knows everyone. So boredom is less than ordinary. What I dislike is that the car is a vital for daily life. Public transit is lacking and things are too spread out to easily go back and forth from work, supermarkets, banks, etc. Still, I have found it a great place to live and frequently make trips back. I really like this review because it does point out some flaws in Moline, and the big flaw that gets pointed out here is the public transit. It exists. We have the metro bus system, but the thing about it is it's a little lacking on where the stops are and how accessible it is to everyone in Moline. And not just Moline, the Quad Cities as a whole has that issue. So it's not like it's just a Moline problem, but it is a Moline problem. It's hard to get around if you don't have a car, so that review is very accurate. So if you're moving to Moline, just know that you're most likely gonna have to have a car to get pretty much anywhere. Down to our final 4-star review, and that 4-star review says, I like that Moline, Illinois is considered to be a part of the Quad Cities. The Quad Cities is made up of 4 cities in both Illinois and Iowa, as our area is located along the Mississippi River in both Illinois and Iowa. What I would like to see change, however, is our business taxes lowered so we can have more opportunities for growth on the Illinois side of the Mississippi versus everything being available on the Iowa side. Now, this is something that comes up quite often, and the concept is the differences in taxes. And it's not just the business taxes. In Moline and Illinois, typically the taxes are higher, and we see this a lot with property taxes specifically. So it's something that you need to consider if you're moving to Moline, that if you care about taxes, look at the taxes before you decide to settle down, because they are going to be a big difference on the Iowa versus Illinois side. The one thing I will argue about that review is that there is still plenty of great businesses over in Moline, even if they're having to deal with some of those taxes that we see. So it's not like it's void of great businesses. It's just sometimes looks like it might be a little bit harder because of those taxes over there. Now that is it for our 4-star reviews. Let's head on into our 3-star. And again, when I'm looking at Amazon reviews, 3 stars is where I'm going to find out what it's really like. Now let's head on into what these 3-star reviews actually say. It's an average suburban town, good for families and people who major in business, with a lot of opportunities related to John Deere. But I feel it is still having issues figuring out exactly what it wants to be, if that's a city type or a bit more of a large suburb. So the thing I want to point out in this particular review is the John Deere comment. If you don't know, John Deere is one of the biggest manufacturers of tractors in the world, and it happens to have its headquarters in Moline. So a lot of the jobs and businesses are related to John Deere in some way or fashion because they're the biggest employer around. And not just in Moline, but the biggest employer in the Quad Cities. So it's a huge deal to have them around here. And we see a lot of people move to Moline because of that. As far as the comment about being a city versus a suburb, I can see where they're coming from. Moline is sitting about 40,000, give or take, and it's not really a big city, but it's also really not a small suburb or a small town. So maybe it does have an identity crisis. I don't know, but it is kind of that in-between stage of being a big city versus a suburb. All right, so let's move on to our second 3-star review. I like that this area is very family-oriented and the community is very open and accepting. This community is very inviting and quick to embrace new families. This particular particular area does not have much of a nightlife scene, and most people tend to stick close to family-friendly vibes, so there isn't much for the single crowd. I find this one quite enjoyable because when I moved to the Quad Cities, I moved to Moline. I was a single 23-year-old, and I can get behind what they're talking about. Now, was there nothing to do? No, there is plenty to do. You got downtown Moline to get out and have a nightlife. Now, is it a super rockin' time all the time? No, you got smaller bars and restaurants down there, but it is a cool area. And I did find my fiance in Moline, so it's definitely a thing that you can do here. Yes, I can see where they're coming from if they came from a bigger city, but in general, it's a pretty good place if you are single and moving to the area. Now, moving on to our third and final 3-star review. The area I live in appeals to a certain type of people. The people it appeals to are the ones that want to live in a small town that has everything they need conveniently located around them. This area is ideal for anyone that wants to live in a big enough area that you don't have to know everyone, but at the same time you aren't overwhelmed by a day-to-day life. I would recommend this area for younger people wanting to settle down and start a family, or anyone looking to start a unique business. The future of this area could be great depending on who comes and what they contribute to the area. Recently, they have added more universities in hopes of bringing the younger population into the area to settle down. Now, I 100% agree with what they're saying, as in it's big enough that you don't have to know everybody, but still small enough that you can have good, close-knit community around you. And that's what I say about the Quad Cities in general all the time, is that you don't have to be doing something 24/7, but if you want to, there is plenty of option for you. And that's really what the heart of this review is talking about. So 100% agree with what they're talking about. Now, I promised you at the beginning that there would be some bad reviews, and it might have been a little bit of a white lie because there really isn't a lot of bad reviews. We have one 2-star review and absolutely no 1-star reviews, which is great because that just shows you how much people really like the city of Moline. Now let's read that final 2-star review and really get a sense of what people really think of Moline. Moline has a population of about 55,000 people, yet the town is so dead. There's not much to do other than seeing a movie and going out to eat. Our only mall, South Park, closed a lot of stores and remodeled by adding couches and televisions. Other than that, the best of us will make the most out of our situation. That is the worst review I could find on the city of Moline, and really it's not that bad. The thing about it though is they talked about South Park Mall. Yes, South Park Mall is kind of dead. You know, there's not a lot of stores in there. There's not a lot of traffic that comes in there. Is it completely gone? Absolutely not, but it's a little bit lacking in what its glory days would have had. Now, that's not something unique to Moline. That is really just malls in general. You know, it's not the place to be anymore, and Moline is just another side effect of that happening. Now, the comment about nothing to do, again, I told you this would be a theme throughout the video. If you're looking for something to do, you can find it, but if you're not and you don't care, well, you don't have to go out and do things. So if Moline sounds like a place you want to be, but you're really not sure what neighborhood, well, that's where I can help you out. My number is popping up down below. I am a licensed realtor in the state of Illinois, and I can help you find that perfect neighborhood in the city of Moline. So if you're moving here, give me a call. But if you want to see another video about what Moline actually looks like, well, check out this vlog of Moline.